Hello, so this is a continuation from step one. So you notice here that now I have 6 scenes in total. I've gone through to create the last few. So if I go over to now control and I go to test, you'll see very quickly that I've got all my shots in. Now they're moving very fast, I know, and we're going to solve that now. So if I go to, let's say, scene 1, let's now press F5. So go over to keyframe 1 and we press F5 till we get to 25 frames. And we do that to each scene. Keyframe 1 and then extend time by going over to frame 25. So our setup at the moment is 25 frames a second. You can choose whichever you want. If you can go to 60, go for it. If you want to go to 30, go for it. If you want to do 24, fine by me. For the sake of my class, where you're working at 25 frames a second, makes no great difference. So go back here, scene 5, and we press F5 to 25 frames. So this is so that we can go through each frame and then we can see what's going on. So you note we haven't started actually animating yet. We're just checking this out basically. So we go back to control and we go and test our movie. So now we should see each second we have the different shot type. And this is here a very basic sort of rundown of what we're going to be doing. Okay, so let's go over to scene 1 and we're going to zoom in. So this is my scene 1. On the scan layer, I'm going to lock it so I can't modify that anymore. And I'm going to start creating the assets for this. So what I'm just getting at is that, and by the way, my movie is running at 30 frames a second. That's perfectly fine. If you want to modify it now is a good time to do it. You go over to modify document and I'm just going to do mine at being 25 frames a second. And yes, it's all good now. So 25 frames equals 1 second there. So it's easy for us to understand. 25, 50, 75, 100. All right, so let's get to this. So I have my scan here and it's locked. I can't modify this. And if I go to paintbrush tool, I can't do anything. Okay, so I go to create a new layer and I'm going to name this layer. Now let's start with the background. I'm going to call this one here hills. And I'm going to have here hills foreground. Because what's going to happen is that this car's going to come out from the middle ground and I need to separate this out. So hills foreground, and I'm going to go over to frame 1 and I'm going to create my hills. So I'm going to go to my paintbrush tool for this one. I can use the pen tool. By the way, if I go to window and I go over to workspaces and I usually use essentials, and that gives me all the tools I need for this purpose. So if I zoom out just by 1, and I've got this here, this narrow black line that you see right across here is my stage. So if I go with my pen tool, I like to start right out from the side, which gives me the ability to do things later on. I'm just going to undo this. So I'm going to make this nice and long. My hill goes around like this. So what I'm doing is I start off by clicking and dragging to create a nice clean curve. And now I've got this pen tool right here. I can now use the paint bucket. So I can choose a color. Let's say I choose that sort of green there. And I go over and fill this now with my paint bucket. And there we have it. You note here that we have a black outline. I can remove this black outline now if I wish. Next time I use the pen tool, I can remove that black line from the start. So that's my foreground. Let's do the middle ground now and then the background. So we go over to the plus, make a new layer, and this one's going to be hills, mid ground. And we're going to choose a slightly different green for this one now, and have no fill for the stroke on this. So go over now with the pen tool, and I'm going to start off right out here, click, drag, keep my finger down, drag, and then go over here, click and then drag, and it gives me a nice smooth curve. I can then understand that this is going to be hidden from the foreground, so I can go around here now and finish that off. Now, that has no stroke on there, so I'm pretty lucky with this. I can choose the different green color, and I can go to the fill, and I can fill this a different color. Geez, it's actually created a black line. I should have checked that again. There we go. So you notice this mid-ground hill is in front of that one. I can simply, in fact, if I just increase the size of this panel here, I can just move this down that way, and there we have it. My hill is behind. I continue this, I create another layer, which is going to be hills background. And I can now create the other hill. You notice that I'm creating all this in multiple layers, and this gives me the maximum flexibility in the case of if I need to modify the layering in terms of where characters come in and out from. So it gives me great flexibility with that. I'm going to zero this out. Zero this out. Come on. Oh, it doesn't let me. And I'm going to go to my paintbrush tool. I'm going to choose a darker green this time round. And we're going to fill this in now. All right, so there we go. So that's my hills there. And I can now lock these off, which is pretty cool. All right, I'm going to move my background behind the mid, so we have nicer depth going on. We can add trees later on in a different layer. Now, with cars, for example, the car needs to be on its own layer. So we're going to create a new layer, and it is in front of the foreground, and I'm going to call this one here car, or what have you. And this car is going to be, I'm not going to draw a car right now, it's going to take too long. So let's say I start off with my oval tool, and I choose, let's say, a red item here. So it's just going to be draw a red circle. All right, so let's say I have my red car here. What did it turn to grey for? I don't know. I think Animate wants to torture me tonight. Okay, so here we go, my red dot, and naturally if I want to animate something, it needs to be on its own layer. Very important that you have your own layer for each individual thing that is moving. So here I've got my car, I'm going to right click, create classic tween. It's going to ask here, would you like to create a symbol for this? And click on OK. So I need to go over to my library, and I need to look at Tween 1, and that is my car. So I need to rename this car. And later on, I can go back and modify this dot to be the car. And here I'm going to go over to frame 25, and I'm going to press F6, and I'm going to shift my car going across here, which is really cool. And there we have it, my car is shifting across here. Now, if I wanted to be a little bit nicer with this, I could put this on a curve. You know how to do that later on. In fact, we've seen this in class already, how to put this on a curve. Just for argument's sake, let's do this now. Let's go over here, right click, and I'm going to create a classic motion guide. And we have our car over here, and we have our guide over here. All we do is we go with the pen tool, and we click and then drag out this way, click and drag out that way to make a nice curve. And you'll see that now this item here hooks up. So I need to make sure that this on this way here. So you can see here that the car is owned by the car guide. and we need to ensure that my car starts on that part of the line and then finishes up on the other side. So let's press return, and the car's going to go across there. I can also hide that now, so our car's going to be going across. And so as you progress, you'll see that the time might shift on each frame of the movie itself, so each shot type, and that's how you go about doing it. So just remember, every time you have something moving, it must be on its own timeline. All right, it must be on its own layer. Right, I can now do really cool things by moving these foregrounds around and stuff like that too. That's it for this one. Thank you. Bye.